The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. Through the thin walls separating my workspace from our house, I could hear Jennifer's voice, low and conspiratorial. At first, I thought she was on another one of her late-night work calls. Insurance claims never seem to sleep in this town. But then I heard the second voice. Male. Intimate. My name is Danny Sullivan, and I've been fixing cars in Meadowbrook for 23 years. I know the sound of every engine in this faded industrial town, can diagnose a transmission problem from 3 blocks away, and I thought I knew my wife's voice better than my own heartbeat. But the woman giggling softly in my kitchen wasn't the Jennifer who used to bring me coffee during late-night repairs. "I can't believe he still thinks I love him," she whispered, and the words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. A man's voice responded, cocky and amused. "He's just a harmless loser, Jen. Guy spends his whole life under car hoods because he can't handle the real world." I pressed myself against the wall, my work clothes still reeking of motor oil and sweat. Through the small window that connected my garage to the kitchen, I watched my wife of 19 years lean against our granite countertop, the one I'd saved for months to buy her, while some muscle-bound pretty boy in designer workout gear ran his hands through her freshly highlighted hair. The trainer from her gym. Brad something. I'd met him exactly once when I'd picked Jennifer up after her car broke down. He'd looked at me like I was something stuck to his expensive sneakers, all fake smiles and condescending handshakes. Now he was in my kitchen at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, and my wife was looking at him like he'd invented fire. "Danny's so predictable," Jennifer continued, her voice carrying that particular brand of cruelty that comes from years of built-up resentment. "Same routine every day, garage, dinner, television, snoring. I swear, sometimes I think he loves those rusty cars more than he ever loved me." Brad chuckled, a sound that made me want to wrap my hands around his perfectly sculpted throat. "Well, you won't have to put up with it much longer. Once we get everything sorted out, you can file for divorce and take him for everything he's worth. This garage, the house, whatever savings he's got tucked away." "What about Emma?" Jennifer asked, referring to our 21-year-old daughter. "She still thinks her father walks on water. She'll come around. College girls are smart. She'll figure out which parent can actually provide for her future. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'd heard enough. My hands were shaking as I backed away from the window, trying to process what felt like a nightmare. 19 years of marriage, a daughter I'd raised since she was in diapers, a business I'd built from nothing, and my wife was planning to destroy it all for some gym rat with perfect teeth and zero character. The smart thing would have been to confront them right then, burst through that door and demand explanations, fight for my marriage like a decent man should, but something cold and calculating had settled in my chest, replacing the initial shock. If Jennifer wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. I slipped out through the garage's side door and walked around to the front of the house, making sure to slam the front door loud enough for them to hear. By the time I reached the kitchen, Brad was gone, and Jennifer was washing wine glasses with suspicious efficiency. "Hey, honey," she said without turning around. "How was your evening? Get that transmission fixed?" "Just fine," I replied, studying her profile. She was still attractive at 42, though the gym membership and expensive hair treatments were recent additions to her routine. "Didn't know you were entertaining company." Her shoulders tensed slightly. "Company? What do you mean?" "Thought I heard voices." "Oh, that was just the television. I was watching some reality show while I cleaned up." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I wondered how many others I'd missed over the months. I nodded and headed for the refrigerator, grabbing a bottle of beer and making a mental note of the 2 wine glasses in the dishwasher. Jennifer had never been much of a wine drinker until recently, another small detail that suddenly made perfect sense. "I'm going to shower," I announced. "Long day tomorrow." As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I could hear Jennifer moving around the kitchen below, probably checking to make sure Brad hadn't left any evidence of his visit. The woman I'd married would have been horrified by such deception. This stranger wearing her face seemed to thrive on it. Standing under the hot water, I let the reality sink in completely. My marriage was over, had probably been over for months while I'd been too focused on work and too trusting to notice. But Jennifer had made one crucial mistake in her planning. She'd assumed I was the same naive mechanic she'd married 2 decades ago, too simple and too honest to fight back effectively. She was about to learn just how wrong she could be. The next morning brought the kind of gray October sky that made Meadowbrook look like a town waiting to be condemned. I opened the garage at 7 sharp, same as always, but my routine had gained a new purpose. While I worked on Mrs. Peterson's ancient Buick, I was really planning my next move. Jennifer had left for work an hour earlier, kissing my cheek with the same casual affection she'd shown for years. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't overheard her confession, I never would have suspected anything. But now every gesture felt calculated, every smile seemed rehearsed. Around 10, my best friend Tommy Kowalski stopped by with coffee and donuts from Murphy's Diner. Tommy was 54, built like a fire hydrant, and ran the boxing gym 3 blocks over. He'd been a cop for 20 years before a bad knee forced him into retirement, and he still had the instincts of someone who'd spent his career reading people's lies. "You look like someone ran over your dog," he said, settling onto an overturned crate that served as our usual meeting spot. "Everything okay at home?" I considered telling him everything right then. Tommy had been through his own messy divorce 10 years back and would understand the betrayal. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe the growing certainty that I needed to handle this my own way. "Just tired," I said instead. "Jennifer's been working late a lot lately. Insurance business is booming, apparently." Tommy raised an eyebrow. He'd known Jennifer almost as long as I had, and was one of the few people in town who'd never been charmed by her public persona. "Insurance business, huh? Funny how that industry keeps such interesting hours." "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific. Just that I've seen her car at some unusual places for someone who's supposed to be working late at the office." My hand stilled on the wrench I was holding. "Such as?" "That new fitness place on Elm Street. A couple times last week, parked there past midnight. Seemed odd for someone who used to complain about staying up past 10 o'clock. The fitness place. Brad's gym. I'd been wondering where they were meeting, and Tommy had just handed me the answer without even realizing it. My friend's old cop instincts were still sharp, even if he didn't know what he was observing. "Maybe she's just trying to get in shape," I said carefully. "Maybe." Tommy's tone suggested he wasn't buying it any more than I was. Just seems like a lot of dedication for someone who used to think exercise was walking to the mailbox. After Tommy left, I spent the rest of the morning thinking about Jennifer's new fitness obsession. She joined the gym 6 months ago, claiming she wanted to feel better about herself as she approached her mid-40s. I'd encouraged her, even offered to pay for personal training sessions if she wanted them. Now I realized she'd found her own personal trainer, and the workouts had nothing to do with cardiovascular health. That afternoon, I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. Jennifer's office was in the renovated downtown area, a sleek insurance agency that catered to Meadowbrook's remaining middle-class families. I parked across the street and waited, feeling ridiculous but determined to gather facts before making any moves. At 5:30, Jennifer emerged from the building with her usual group of coworkers. They chatted for a few minutes on the sidewalk before going their separate ways. Jennifer climbed into her Honda and drove directly to Elite Fitness on Elm Street. Not home, not to the grocery store, but straight to Brad's gym. I followed at a distance, parking behind a delivery truck that gave me a clear view of the gym's entrance. Jennifer disappeared inside, and 45 minutes later, she emerged with Brad. They stood close together in the parking lot, his hand resting on her lower back in a gesture that was anything but professional. When they separated, Brad climbed into a flashy red Mustang that probably cost more than most people in Meadowbrook made in a year. Interesting. Personal trainers at small-town gyms didn't usually drive cars like that. Either Brad had family money, or he was supplementing his income in ways that might not bear close examination. I followed the Mustang through downtown Meadowbrook, past the shuttered factories and half-empty strip malls that told the story of our town's economic decline. Brad's destination surprised me. A modern house in Willowbrook Estates, the only upscale development within 20 miles. The homes there started at $300,000, well beyond the reach of most locals. As I watched Brad pull into the driveway of a glass and steel monstrosity that looked like it belonged in California rather than small-town Michigan, I began to understand the scope of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just some opportunistic trainer taking advantage of a vulnerable married woman. This was a calculated seduction, probably aimed at Jennifer's assets as much as her affections. The thought should have made me angrier, but instead, I felt something closer to relief. If Brad was a con artist, then Jennifer was as much a victim as I was. Maybe there was still a chance to save our marriage, to expose Brad's true motives, and bring my wife back to her senses. That optimistic theory lasted exactly until I drove home and found Jennifer in our bedroom, changing clothes with an excitement I hadn't seen in years. "Going somewhere special?" I asked from the doorway. She jumped slightly, then smiled with what I now recognized as practiced deception. "Girls' night with Lisa and the gang. We're trying that new wine bar downtown." Lisa was Jennifer's best friend and coworker, a divorced woman who'd been encouraging Jennifer's new independent streak. I'd always liked Lisa, but now I wondered if she was part of the conspiracy or just another victim of Jennifer's lies. "Sounds fun," I said. "Don't wait up for me. I've got that engine rebuild to finish." Jennifer nodded and kissed my cheek again, the same casual gesture that had once meant everything and now felt like a mockery. After she left, I sat in our bedroom and tried to remember the last time she'd shown genuine affection, the last time we talked about anything more meaningful than schedules and household maintenance. The truth was, I couldn't remember. Somewhere along the way, without either of us really noticing, we'd become strangers sharing a mortgage. Maybe that made Jennifer's betrayal inevitable. Maybe I was as much to blame as anyone. But blame could wait. Right now, I had more intelligence to gather. By 10 o'clock that night, I was parked outside the wine bar downtown, watching through the large front windows for any sign of Jennifer's alleged girls' night. The place was busy for a Tuesday, filled with the kind of young professionals who commuted to Grand Rapids for work and came back to Meadowbrook for the lower cost of living. I spotted Lisa immediately. Her distinctive red hair made her impossible to miss. She was sitting at the bar with two other women I recognized from Jennifer's office, laughing at something on someone's phone. What I didn't see was my wife. The smart thing would have been to drive straight to Brad's house and confirm what I already knew. Instead, I found myself walking into the wine bar, approaching Lisa's group with what I hoped looked like casual concern. "Hey, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Have you seen Jennifer? She said she was meeting you here, but I don't see her anywhere." Lisa's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like pity. "Oh, Danny, I think there might be some confusion. Jennifer called this afternoon and said she couldn't make it tonight. Some last-minute work thing." The other women at the bar suddenly found their drinks fascinating, avoiding eye contact with obvious discomfort. They knew. Maybe not the details, but they knew Jennifer was lying to her husband, and they were part of the cover-up. "Work thing," I repeated. "Right. Well, if you hear from her, tell her I stopped by." I was halfway to the door when Lisa caught up with me. "Danny, wait." I turned, hoping she might offer some explanation that would make sense of the situation. Instead, she looked genuinely conflicted, as if she was wrestling with how much truth to reveal. "Look, I don't know what's going on exactly," she said quietly. "But Jennifer's been different lately. Distant. Like she's got something big on her mind, but doesn't know how to talk about it." "Different how?" "She's been asking a lot of questions about my divorce. Legal stuff, financial stuff, how to protect assets, that kind of thing." Lisa paused, clearly uncomfortable. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I'm worried about her, about both of you." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. Jennifer wasn't just having an affair, she was actively planning to end our marriage and had been researching the best ways to leave me with as little as possible. The woman I'd trusted with everything was systematically preparing to destroy my life. "Thanks for telling me," I managed. "I appreciate your honesty." Lisa touched my arm gently. "Danny, whatever's happening between you two, maybe you should try talking to her. Really talking. Before it's too late." Too late. The phrase echoed in my head as I drove through Meadowbrook's empty streets toward Willowbrook Estates. Too late for honest conversation, too late for marriage counseling, too late for any of the civilized solutions that decent people use to solve their problems. Brad's house was lit up like a Christmas display, every window glowing against the darkness. I parked at the end of the street and walked closer, staying in the shadows cast by the carefully landscaped trees. Through the large front windows, I could see into a living room that looked like a furniture showroom, all clean lines and expensive materials with no hint of personality. Jennifer's Honda was parked in the driveway next to the Mustang. I circled around to the back of the house, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view into what appeared to be a home gym. The equipment looked professional grade and barely used, more for show than actual fitness. Beyond the gym, I could see into a kitchen where Jennifer and Brad were sharing what looked like an intimate dinner. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her figure and probably cost more than I made in a week. Her hair was styled differently, and she was laughing at something Brad was saying with genuine delight. This wasn't the tired, stressed woman who came home to me every evening. This was someone I barely recognized. As I watched, Brad reached across the table and took Jennifer's hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned forward, and they kissed with the passion of new lovers who still found each other irresistible. That was when the anger finally hit me. Not the hot rage of a betrayed husband, but something colder and more calculating. Jennifer had made her choice, and she'd made it months ago while lying to my face every single day. She'd been planning my destruction while I worried about her happiness, researching ways to take everything I'd worked for while pretending to be the devoted wife. If she wanted to play games, I'd give her a game she'd never forget. I walked back to my truck and drove home, my mind already working through possibilities. Jennifer came home around midnight, slipping into bed beside me with the practiced quiet of someone who'd done this many times before. She smelled like expensive cologne and wine, scents that had nothing to do with a girls' night at a local bar. "How was your evening?" I asked softly. "Oh, you know how it is with Lisa and the girls. Lots of wine, lots of gossip. Nothing too exciting." Another smooth lie, delivered without hesitation. "Sounds nice," I said. "I'm glad you had fun." Jennifer curled up on her side of the bed, and within minutes her breathing had settled into the rhythm of sleep. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. The old Danny Sullivan would have confronted her in the morning, demanded explanations and apologies, probably ended up begging her to work on our marriage. But that Danny had been naive enough to trust a woman who was systematically planning his destruction. The new Danny Sullivan was going to be much more interesting. The next morning, I called in a favor from my cousin Mike, who worked in the county clerk's office. Mike owed me for the free brake job I'd done on his truck last month, and he was the kind of guy who understood that sometimes you needed information without a lot of questions asked. "I need you to look up some property records for me," I told him over the phone. "Guy named Brad something, lives in Willowbrook Estates, the big glass house on Maple Ridge Drive." "That'd be Brad Hoffman," Mike said immediately. "Guy's been in the news lately, some kind of fitness guru who's supposed to be opening a chain of gyms across the state." Brad Hoffman. Now I had a full name to work with. "What kind of news?" "Business section stuff, mostly. Big plans, lots of investor meetings. Though between you and me, I heard some rumors that his financing isn't as solid as he claims." "What kind of rumors?" Mike lowered his voice, even though we were talking on the phone. "Word is, he's been borrowing against properties he doesn't fully own yet, playing shell games with mortgages and business loans. Nothing illegal, necessarily, but risky as heck." This was getting more interesting by the minute. If Brad was financially overextended, then Jennifer's assets would be even more attractive to him. Her insurance agency salary wasn't huge, but she had access to our joint accounts, and she knew exactly how much equity we had in the house and business. "Can you get me copies of the property records?" I asked. "Sure thing. I'll have them ready this afternoon." After hanging up, I spent the morning working on a particularly stubborn carburetor while my mind processed this new information. Brad wasn't just a trainer having an affair with a married woman. He was a businessman in financial trouble who targeted my wife for her assets. The question was whether Jennifer knew she was being used, or if she was a willing participant in whatever scheme they were running. Around noon, Emma stopped by the garage. My daughter was home from college for a long weekend, and seeing her reminded me of everything I stood to lose in this mess. Emma had Jennifer's dark hair and my stubborn chin, and she'd inherited the best qualities from both of us, at least the qualities we used to have. "Hey, Dad," she said, settling onto Tommy's usual crate. "Mom said you've been working a lot of late nights lately. Everything okay with the business?" "Business is fine," I said, not looking up from the engine I was rebuilding. "Just trying to stay ahead of the bills." Emma was quiet for a moment, and when I glanced over, she was studying me with the kind of intensity that reminded me she was majoring in psychology. "You seem different lately, distracted." "Just tired, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is everything okay between you and Mom?" The question caught me off guard. If Emma was noticing tension, then Jennifer and I weren't hiding our problems as well as we thought, or maybe college had sharpened Emma's ability to read people. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. She seems happier lately, but in a weird way, like she's got a secret or something, and you seem more stressed than usual." Happier. That was exactly right. Jennifer had been glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from new romance, new possibilities, new plans for the future, plans that didn't include her husband of 19 years. "Your mother's been working hard," I said carefully. "Maybe she's just excited about some new opportunities at the agency." Emma nodded, but she didn't look convinced. "Dad, if something was wrong, really wrong, you'd tell me, right? I'm not a kid anymore." I put down my tools and really looked at my daughter. She was 21, old enough to handle adult problems, but she was also still my little girl. The thought of her getting caught in the middle of whatever was about to happen made my chest tight. "If there's ever anything you need to know, I promise I'll tell you," I said. "But right now, you should focus on school and let your old man worry about the grown-up stuff." Emma smiled and kissed my forehead before heading back to the house. As I watched her go, I realized that she was another factor I needed to consider in whatever plan I was developing. Emma loved both her parents, and she deserved to know the truth about what was happening to our family. But she also deserved to be protected from the ugliest parts of adult betrayal. That afternoon, Mike delivered the property records as promised. The documents made for fascinating reading. Brad's house was mortgaged to the hilt, with 3 different loans against the property and payments that would strain most people's budgets. His gym was similarly leveraged, with equipment loans, business mortgages, and what looked like several private investors who'd put money into his expansion plans. On paper, Brad looked successful. In reality, he was drowning in debt and desperately needed an infusion of cash to keep his empire from collapsing. Jennifer's assets might not be enough to save him, but they could buy him time to find other solutions. The more I learned about Brad Hoffman, the angrier I became, not just at him, but at Jennifer. She wasn't some innocent victim being manipulated by a smooth-talking con artist. She was a smart woman who worked in insurance, someone who understood financial risk better than most people. If she was involved with Brad, she knew exactly what his situation was. That evening, Jennifer announced that she was going to work late again. "Big presentation tomorrow," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'll probably be at the office until 10 or 11. "Want me to bring you dinner?" I offered. "That's sweet, but Lisa's ordering pizza for everyone who's staying late. We'll be fine." Another lie, delivered with the same casual confidence as all the others. I wondered how long she'd been practicing this deception. How many evenings she'd spent with Brad while I sat at home watching television and trusting my wife. After Jennifer left, I called Lisa's office number. The voicemail message said the office was closed and would reopen at 8 the next morning. So much for the late-night presentation. I was beginning to understand that Jennifer's betrayal went deeper than a simple affair. She'd been living a double life for months, possibly longer, while I remained completely oblivious. Every kiss, every conversation, every moment of apparent intimacy had been a performance designed to keep me from discovering her true feelings and plans. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, had become a stranger who was actively working to destroy everything we'd built together, and she was doing it with a smile on her face and lies on her lips. It was time to start fighting back. Thursday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn weather that used to make me optimistic about the day ahead. Now it felt like the perfect backdrop for what I was planning. I'd spent most of the night thinking through my options, and I'd settled on a strategy that would send a clear message without crossing any legal lines. Jennifer left for work at her usual time, kissing my cheek and reminding me that she'd be late again. "Another presentation," she said with practiced sincerity. "This insurance business never stops." "I'm sure Brad appreciates your dedication," I said casually. Jennifer froze for just a moment, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What?" "Brad, your trainer. I figured he appreciates clients who are dedicated to their fitness goals." The relief on her face was almost comical. "Oh, right. Yes, he's very supportive of everyone's progress." After she left, I spent an hour researching Brad's daily routine through social media. The man was addicted to posting updates about his life, from his morning protein shake to his evening meditation sessions. According to his Instagram, he taught a spinning class at 10, had personal training sessions until 3, and usually spent his evenings at various upscale establishments around the county. What he didn't post about were his Tuesday and Thursday evening appointments with married insurance agents. I waited until noon, then drove to Willowbrook Estates with a trunk full of supplies I'd gathered from the garage. Brad's Mustang was parked in the driveway, gleaming red paint, reflecting the autumn sunshine. It was a beautiful car, the kind of status symbol that announced its owner's success to the world. It was also about to become a canvas for my artistic expression. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back, carrying a small toolkit and wearing the kind of work clothes that made me invisible in any neighborhood. People expected to see maintenance workers and delivery drivers in residential areas. They didn't pay attention to middle-aged men in coveralls who looked like they belonged there. Brad's house sat on a large lot with mature trees that provided excellent cover. I approached the Mustang from the rear, staying low and moving quickly. The first part of my message was simple. 4 flat tires, courtesy of a small nail driven into each sidewall. Not slashed. That would be obvious vandalism. Just punctured in a way that would look like incredibly bad luck. The second part required more creativity. I'd brought along a container of honey from our kitchen cabinet and a small funnel. Brad's car had racing-style air vents on the hood, perfect for my purposes. A generous amount of honey poured into the air intake would create interesting problems the next time he started the engine. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be cleaned out by a good mechanic, but definitely expensive and inconvenient. For the final touch, I used a washable marker to write a message on his windshield. "You picked the wrong car, asshole." Simple, direct, and guaranteed to make him think twice about his current lifestyle choices. The entire operation took less than 10 minutes. By the time I was walking back to my truck, Brad's beautiful Mustang looked like it had been visited by the world's most targeted streak of bad luck. I drove home with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. It was a small victory, but it felt like the first step in reclaiming some control over my life. Brad Hoffman was about to learn that actions have consequences, and that not everyone in Meadowbrook was as naive as he assumed. The real test would be how Jennifer reacted when she heard about Brad's car troubles. If she was truly innocent, she'd have no reason to connect the vandalism to her husband. If she was part of the scheme, she'd start wondering how much I really knew. That afternoon, Tommy stopped by with his usual coffee and donuts. He took one look at my face and grinned. "You look like someone who just won the lottery." "Just a good day," I said. "Sometimes the simplest repairs are the most satisfying." "Uh-huh." Tommy settled onto his crate and studied me with cop eyes. "Danny, you know I've been your friend for 20 years, right?" "Of course." "And you know I can tell when someone's planning something they probably shouldn't be planning?" I kept working on the transmission I was rebuilding, not meeting his gaze. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't. Look, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, and I'm not asking. But if you're thinking about doing something stupid, maybe you should talk to someone first." "Like who?" "Like a lawyer, or a counselor, or even just a friend who's been through his own messy situation and learned a few things along the way." Tommy's concern was genuine, and part of me wanted to tell him everything. But I wasn't ready to admit the full scope of Jennifer's betrayal. Wasn't ready to hear someone else confirm what I already knew about my marriage. "I appreciate the concern," I said, "but I'm handling things just fine." Famous last words, Tommy muttered. "Just remember, whatever Jennifer's done, Emma doesn't deserve to get caught in the crossfire." The mention of my daughter hit home harder than Tommy probably intended. Emma was the innocent party in all of this, and she deserved to know the truth about her parents' marriage, but she also deserved to be protected from the ugliest parts of what was coming. That evening, Jennifer came home at her usual time, chattering about her day at the office with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. Either she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for, or Brad hadn't told her about his car troubles yet. "How was your day?" she asked, settling beside me on the couch where I was pretending to watch television. "Productive," I said. Fixed Mrs. Peterson's Buick, started on a transmission rebuild, helped a guy with some tire problems. "Tire problems?" "Yeah, funny thing. All 4 tires went flat at the same time. What are the odds of that happening naturally?" Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Probably pretty low?" "That's what I thought. Guy was really upset about it. Seemed to think someone had targeted his car specifically." "Why would someone do that?" I shrugged, keeping my eyes on the television. "Maybe he made the wrong person angry. You know how it is in small towns. Everyone knows everyone else's business." Jennifer nodded slowly, and I could feel her studying my profile. "That's true. People should be more careful about their behavior." "Absolutely. You never know who's watching." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the subtext of our conversation. Jennifer was smart enough to understand that I was sending her a message, but she couldn't be sure how much I actually knew. The game had officially begun. Friday morning brought the first real test of my new strategy. Jennifer seemed distracted at breakfast, checking her phone more frequently than usual and barely touching her coffee. When I asked if everything was okay, she claimed to be worried about a difficult client at work. "Insurance can be so stressful," she said with a tight smile. "People expect miracles when their claims get complicated." "I'm sure you'll work it out," I replied. "You've always been good at solving problems." After Jennifer left for work, I spent an hour researching Brad's business more thoroughly. His gym's website was full of testimonials from satisfied clients and photos of expensive equipment, but a deeper look revealed some interesting details. Several of the testimonials were from fake accounts, and some of the equipment photos had been lifted from other gyms' websites. Brad Hoffman wasn't just financially overextended, he was actively deceiving potential investors and clients about the scope of his success. This was useful information, the kind of ammunition I might need later. Around 10 o'clock, Emma stopped by the garage again. She seemed more subdued than usual, and when I asked about her classes, she gave vague answers about papers and exams. "Dad, can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course." "Yesterday, when I was having lunch with Mom, she asked me some weird questions about college expenses, like how much my tuition costs, whether I'd be okay with student loans, that kind of thing." I put down the socket wrench I was holding. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you and she have been saving for my education since I was little, and that I'm grateful I don't have to worry about loans like most of my friends." Emma paused. "But it was strange. She acted like she didn't know how much money you'd set aside for school." This was new information. Jennifer had always been involved in our financial planning, including Emma's college fund. If she was asking Emma about expenses, it suggested she was trying to figure out how much money would be tied up in our daughter's education, money that wouldn't be available for whatever she and Brad were planning. Maybe she was just double-checking the numbers, I suggested. Your mother likes to be thorough about financial planning. Maybe. Emma didn't sound convinced. Dad, is Mom thinking about changing jobs or something? She's been asking a lot of questions about money lately. You'd have to ask her about that, sweetheart. I don't know what she's thinking about her career. That was certainly true. I had no idea what Jennifer was thinking about anything anymore, except that it apparently involved destroying our family's financial security for the sake of a man who was probably using her as much as she was using me. After Emma left, I decided it was time to gather more intelligence about Brad's operation. I drove to Elite Fitness and paid for a day pass, claiming I was considering a membership. The facility was impressive on the surface. New equipment, clean locker rooms, motivational posters covering every wall. But it was also nearly empty for a Friday afternoon. The young woman at the front desk seemed surprised to have an actual customer. Are you interested in personal training sessions? She asked hopefully. Brad's our head trainer, and he's amazing. Really knows how to motivate people. I've heard good things about him, I said. Is he available for a consultation? He's with a client right now, but he should be free in about an hour. Would you like to wait? I declined and spent the next 45 minutes exploring the facility. The weight room was well equipped, but showed signs of light use. The cardio area had a dozen machines, but only 2 were occupied. The group fitness studio was completely empty despite being scheduled for an aerobics class. Most telling was the business office, which I glimpsed through an open door. The desk was covered with past due notices and collection letters, and I could see a computer screen showing what looked like a spreadsheet full of red numbers. Brad Hoffman's fitness empire was failing, and failing badly. He needed an infusion of cash soon, or he'd lose everything he'd borrowed against. Jennifer's assets might not be enough to save his business, but they could buy him time to find other solutions, or disappear with whatever money he could grab. I left the gym without meeting Brad, but I'd learned everything I needed to know. This wasn't a love affair. It was a financial crime in progress, and my wife was either a willing accomplice or the primary target. That evening, Jennifer announced another late night at the office. Big client meeting, she explained. Could run past midnight. On a Friday night? Insurance emergencies don't follow normal business hours, she said with practiced sincerity. You know how it is. I nodded and wished her luck with the meeting. After she left, I called the office number again and got the same voicemail message about being closed until Monday morning. This time, instead of following Jennifer to Brad's house, I decided to try a different approach. I drove to Lisa's apartment complex and knocked on her door around 9 o'clock. Lisa answered wearing pajamas and holding a glass of wine, clearly surprised to see me. Danny, is everything okay? I'm looking for Jennifer, I said. She mentioned she was working late with you and the team, but when I called the office, I got the closed message. Lisa's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like guilt. Oh, well, we're not actually at the office. We're working from my place tonight. Jennifer stepped out to grab some dinner for everyone. It was a lie, but not a very good one. Lisa was clearly uncomfortable with the deception, and I could see into her apartment well enough to know that no work meeting was taking place. I see, I said. Well, when she gets back, tell her I stopped by. Nothing urgent. As I walked back to my truck, I realized that Lisa was another victim of Jennifer's lies. My wife had been using her best friend as an alibi, probably for months, without Lisa fully understanding what she was covering for. The scope of Jennifer's deception was becoming clearer. She'd been systematically lying to everyone in her life. Me, Emma, Lisa, probably her coworkers and family members too. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a midlife crisis. This was a calculated campaign of betrayal that had been going on for months. By the time I got home, I'd made a decision. The gloves were coming off. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of bitter wind that promised an early winter. I woke up alone. Jennifer had come home sometime after midnight and was sleeping in the guest room, claiming she didn't want to wake me after such a late night. Another small lie in an increasingly elaborate web of deception. I spent the morning in my garage, ostensibly working on the transmission rebuild, but really planning my next move. The time for subtle messages had passed. Jennifer needed to understand that I knew exactly what she was doing and that her carefully constructed double life was about to collapse. Around noon, Emma came home from a shopping trip with friends, full of excitement about some new clothes she'd bought for an upcoming sorority event. Watching her happiness, knowing it was about to be shattered by her parents' failing marriage, made my chest tight with regret. "Where's Mom?" she asked, settling onto Tommy's crate with a cup of coffee. Still sleeping. She had a late night at work. Emma raised an eyebrow. She's been having a lot of late nights lately. The insurance business must be booming. Something like that? My daughter studied my face with the intensity that reminded me she was majoring in psychology. Dad, you're doing that thing where you answer questions without actually saying anything? What's really going on? Before I could respond, Jennifer appeared in the doorway connecting the garage to the house. She was wearing one of her new outfits, designer jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. Her hair was styled perfectly despite having just woken up, and she was wearing makeup that looked professionally applied. Good morning, family, she said with bright cheerfulness that felt forced. Sorry I slept so late. Yesterday was exhausting. I bet it was, I said, not looking up from the engine I was working on. Jennifer shot me a sharp look, then smiled at Emma. Sweetheart, I was thinking we could have a girls' day today. Maybe drive to Grand Rapids, do some shopping, get our nails done. That sounds fun, Emma said, but I promised I'd help Dad with some projects around here. What kind of projects? I straightened up and met Jennifer's gaze directly. I thought it was time to clean out some of the clutter we've accumulated over the years, get rid of things that are taking up space but don't serve any useful purpose anymore. The message was clear enough that even Emma picked up on the tension. She looked back and forth between her parents, clearly sensing an undercurrent she didn't understand. Maybe we should all spend the day together, Emma suggested carefully. As a family. That's a wonderful idea, Jennifer said quickly. We could drive to that new restaurant by the lake, make a whole afternoon of it. Actually, I said, I think it's time your mother and I had a private conversation. Emma, would you mind giving us some space? Emma looked worried, but she nodded and headed back toward the house. I'll be in my room if you need anything. After our daughter was gone, Jennifer and I faced each other across the garage. The space suddenly felt smaller, charged with 19 years of shared history and recent betrayals. What's this about, Danny? Jennifer asked, her voice carefully neutral. I think you know. I really don't. You've been acting strange all week, making cryptic comments and watching me like you expect me to do something wrong. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, taking my time before responding. How's Brad's car running these days? Jennifer went very still. What? Brad Hoffman, your personal trainer. The one whose house you visit every Tuesday and Thursday evening while you're supposedly working late or having girls' nights out. The color drained from Jennifer's face, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've been having an affair with him for months, probably longer. You've been lying to me, to Emma, to Lisa, to everyone who cares about you, and you've been researching divorce lawyers and asset protection strategies because you're planning to leave me and take as much of our money as you can grab. Jennifer's mask of innocence finally slipped, replaced by something colder and more calculating. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, what are we going to do about it? She crossed her arms and leaned against the door frame, studying me with new interest. What do you want, Danny? An apology? A promise to end things with Brad? Some kind of marriage counseling where we pretend this can all be fixed? I want the truth. All of it. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of affection. The truth is, I've been miserable for years. Married to a man who cares more about rusty cars than his own wife, living in a town that's slowly rotting away, pretending to be satisfied with a life that's going nowhere. So you decided to have an affair. I decided to find someone who actually appreciates me, someone with ambition and plans for the future, someone who doesn't smell like motor oil and think that dinner at Murphy's Diner is a romantic evening out. The contempt in her voice was like a physical blow. This wasn't the woman I'd married, or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see her true nature. And the divorce planning? Jennifer shrugged. I'm 42 years old, Danny. If I'm going to start over, I need to be smart about it. That means protecting myself financially and making sure Emma's future is secure. By taking everything I've worked for. By taking what I'm legally entitled to. I've been part of this marriage for 19 years. I've earned my share of whatever we've built together. The casual way she discussed destroying my life was almost impressive in its coldness. Jennifer had thought this through carefully, weighing her options and deciding that I was disposable. What about Emma? I asked. Emma will understand eventually. She's smart enough to see that her father never had any real ambition, never tried to give his family the life they deserved. And Brad? Does he love you, or does he just love your bank account? For the first time, Jennifer looked uncertain. That's none of your business. It is when he's planning to use your money to save his failing business. Did you know Elite Fitness is about 6 months away from bankruptcy? Did you know Brad's house is mortgaged to the hilt, and he's behind on most of his loans? Jennifer's confidence wavered slightly. Brad's business is expanding. He's opening new locations across the state. Brad's business is collapsing. He's been lying to investors, faking testimonials, and borrowing money he can't pay back. You're not his girlfriend, Jennifer. You're his retirement plan. You're lying. I pulled out the property records Mike had given me and handed them to Jennifer. See for yourself. Your boyfriend is drowning in debt, and you're the life preserver he's planning to grab. Jennifer scanned the documents, her face growing paler with each page. When she looked up, there was something like panic in her eyes. This doesn't change anything, she said finally. Even if Brad's having financial problems, that doesn't mean... It means you've been played, I interrupted, by a man who targeted you specifically because he knew you had access to money and were vulnerable to flattery. Jennifer crumpled the papers and threw them at my feet. At least he makes me feel alive. At least he sees me as more than a housekeeper and cook. He sees you as a bank account with legs. And what do you see me as, Danny? Because for the last 5 years, I've felt like furniture in my own house, something you take for granted and barely notice unless it stops working properly. The accusation hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. Maybe I had taken Jennifer for granted. Maybe I had gotten so focused on work and routine that I'd stopped seeing her as a person with her own dreams and disappointments. But that didn't justify what she'd done. That didn't excuse the lies, the betrayal, the systematic planning to destroy everything we'd built together. It's too late for marriage counseling, I said quietly. Isn't it? Jennifer nodded. It's been too late for a long time. We've just been pretending otherwise. Then I guess we both know what happens next. I guess we do. We stood there for a moment, 19 years of marriage officially ending in a garage that smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. Then Jennifer turned and walked back into the house, leaving me alone with the ruins of everything I'd thought I knew about my life. The gloves weren't just coming off anymore. The war had officially begun. The next phase of my campaign began that very evening. Jennifer had retreated to the guest room after our confrontation, claiming she needed space to think. What she really needed was time to call Brad and figure out how much damage I could do to their plans. I spent the afternoon researching social media strategies and creating accounts on platforms I'd never bothered with before. If Jennifer wanted to play games with public perception, I'd show her how the game was really played. My first post was simple and direct, shared on Meadowbrook's largest community Facebook group. Has anyone else noticed an increase in suspicious activity around town lately? The cars being vandalized, people lying about their whereabouts, businesses that look successful but are actually failing? Just wondering if other folks have seen what I'm seeing. The post got 36 comments within an hour. Small towns thrive on gossip, and I'd just thrown fresh meat to the sharks. People started sharing their own stories about suspicious behavior, failed businesses, and neighbors who seemed to be living beyond their means. I didn't mention Jennifer or Brad by name, but I didn't need to. In a town like Meadowbrook, everyone would start connecting the dots on their own. My second post was more targeted, shared in a group for local business owners. Thinking about joining Elite Fitness, but want to make sure they're financially stable before I sign a long-term contract. Anyone know how their membership numbers are doing? Place seems pretty empty whenever I drive by. That post generated even more interest. Several people shared stories about gyms that had closed suddenly, taking membership fees and leaving customers with worthless contracts. Others mentioned seeing Elite Fitness advertising heavily, which usually meant they were desperate for new revenue. By Sunday morning, the seeds I'd planted were starting to sprout. Jennifer came downstairs looking haggard, her phone buzzing constantly with calls and messages. People are talking, she said without preamble. People always talk in small towns, I replied. What are they saying? You know exactly what they're saying. Someone's been spreading rumors about Brad's business, asking questions about his finances. Maybe people are just being careful with their money. Times are tough. Jennifer slammed her coffee cup down hard enough to slosh liquid onto the counter. Stop playing games, Danny. If you have something to say, just say it. I already said it yesterday. You've been having an affair with a man who's using you for your money. Now the whole town is going to find out what kind of person you really are. What kind of person I really are? Jennifer's voice rose to a near shout. You're the one destroying people's reputations with lies and rumors. I haven't told any lies. Everything I've shared is public record or personal observation. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas and looking worried. Why are you two yelling? What's going on? Jennifer and I looked at our daughter, both of us realizing that we'd reached the point where Emma deserved to know the truth. She was 21 years old, smart enough to handle adult problems, and she'd already noticed that something was wrong between her parents. Sit down, sweetheart, I said gently. Your mother and I need to tell you something. Emma settled at the kitchen table, looking back and forth between us with growing alarm. Are you getting divorced? Yes, Jennifer said before I could respond. We are. Emma's face crumpled slightly, but she held herself together. How long have you been planning this? It's complicated, Jennifer began, but I cut her off. Your mother has been having an affair, I said, with her personal trainer. She's been lying to both of us for months while she planned to leave and take as much of our money as possible. Danny, Jennifer snapped, you don't have to be so crude about it. Crude? I turned to face her fully. You've been sleeping with another man while lying to our daughter's face, and you think I'm being crude by telling the truth? Emma held up her hands. Stop. Both of you. Just stop. She took a shaky breath. Mom, is what Dad said true? Jennifer's mask of righteous anger slipped, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. It's not that simple, Emma. Your father and I have been growing apart for years. I found someone who makes me happy, someone who sees a future worth working toward. So you cheated on Dad. I fell in love with someone else. It happens. Emma nodded slowly, processing this information with the analytical mind she'd inherited from both parents. And the money thing? I'm entitled to half of everything we've built together, Jennifer said defensively. That's how divorce works. Even Dad's business? Even the business. Emma was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. So you've been planning to destroy Dad's life while pretending everything was normal. I've been planning to start a new life, Jennifer corrected. Your father will be fine. He's resourceful. He built that business from nothing. It's not just his job, it's his identity. Then maybe he should have paid more attention to his family instead of spending all his time in that garage. Emma stood up abruptly. I need some air. After our daughter left, Jennifer and I sat in uncomfortable silence. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, charged with 20 years of history and fresh betrayals. She'll come around, Jennifer said finally, once she understands that this is what's best for everyone. Will she? Because it sounds like she understands the situation perfectly. Jennifer's phone buzzed again, and she glanced at the screen with obvious anxiety. I need to go out for a while. To see Brad? To figure out what we're going to do about the mess you've created. After Jennifer left, I spent the rest of the morning preparing for the next phase of my campaign. I'd been playing defense for too long, reacting to Jennifer's moves instead of making my own. It was time to go on the offensive. My first call was to a lawyer in Grand Rapids, someone Tommy had recommended during his own divorce. The consultation was scheduled for Tuesday morning, which would give me time to gather all the financial documents I'd need. My second call was to Mike at the county clerk's office. I need you to do some more research for me, I told him. Everything you can find about Elite Fitness and Brad Hoffman. Business licenses, tax records, any legal filings or complaints? You sure you want to go down this road? Mike asked. Once you start digging into someone's business records, there's no going back. I'm sure. My third call was to Tommy. I need a favor, I said, and you're not going to like it. What kind of favor? The kind that uses your old cop contacts to find out if Brad Hoffman has any legal problems I should know about. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Danny, whatever you're planning, maybe you should slow down and think it through. I've thought it through. Jennifer made her choice, and now she gets to live with the consequences. What about Emma? Emma deserves to know the truth about her mother. All of it. By Sunday evening, I'd set several wheels in motion. Jennifer came home around 10, looking defeated and angry. She went straight to the guest room without speaking to me, but I could hear her making phone calls late into the night. The war was escalating, and I was finally ready to win it. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Mike called just after Jennifer left for work, his voice tight with excitement. You're not going to believe what I found, he said. Your boy Brad has been under investigation by the state attorney general's office for the last 6 months. Securities fraud, investor fraud, the whole package. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Brad wasn't just financially overextended. He was actively stealing from investors to keep his business afloat. Jennifer hadn't just fallen for a con artist, she'd fallen for a criminal. How long before they arrest him? I asked. Could be any day now. They're building an airtight case, but these things take time. I thanked Mike and hung up, my mind racing through the implications. If Brad was arrested, Jennifer's affair would become public knowledge in the worst possible way. She'd be associated with a criminal investigation, possibly even questioned as a potential accomplice. The revenge I'd been planning suddenly seemed unnecessary. Brad Hoffman was about to destroy himself, and he'd take Jennifer's reputation down with him. But as I thought about everything my wife had put me through, the lies, the betrayal, the casual cruelty of her dismissal, I realized that wasn't enough. Jennifer needed to understand the full scope of what she'd done, and she needed to face the consequences of her choices. I spent the morning crafting one final social media post, this one targeted at Jennifer's coworkers and friends. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Sometimes the life we think we want is built on lies and deception. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to accept the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Then I sat back and waited for Jennifer's world to collapse completely. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. Jennifer, sobbing and panicked, begging me to come home immediately. By the time I arrived, there were 2 unmarked police cars in our driveway, and Emma was standing on the front porch looking shell-shocked. Brad Hoffman had been arrested that morning on multiple fraud charges. Jennifer had been questioned as a potential witness and possible accomplice. The local news was already running the story, complete with photos of Brad's house and Jim. My wife's affair was now front-page news, and her reputation was destroyed beyond repair. "I didn't know," Jennifer kept saying through her tears. "I swear I didn't know what he was doing." Maybe that was true. Maybe Jennifer really had been just another victim of Brad's schemes. But she'd still betrayed our marriage, still lied to our daughter, still planned to destroy everything I'd worked for. The truth was finally out, and everyone in Meadowbrook knew exactly what kind of woman Jennifer Sullivan really was. As I watched my wife's carefully constructed new life crumble around her, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but sadness. This wasn't the ending I'd wanted for our marriage. This wasn't the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago, but it was the woman she'd chosen to become, and now she'd have to live with the consequences. The last honest man in Meadowbrook had finally learned to play the game, and I'd won.